We are now nearly a month into the 2024 college football season, so teams have started to show their true colors, and today I wanted to rank all the SEC teams. No, it's not going to be based on some obscure formula, but instead, I'm just going to give my personal power rankings of all 16 SEC teams through 1 month of college football action. You may disagree or agree with my takes, but no matter what, I want to hear your opinions down below. We're going to go through each team, talk about their season so far, and then I'm going to talk about why I have them ranked where they are. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now, let's do a power rankings for every SEC team. Okay, so at number 16, we have the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They are currently in year 1 under head coach Jeff Lebby, who was one of the top offensive coordinators at both Oklahoma and Ole Miss the last couple of years. Everyone knew the Bulldogs would struggle in year 1, but so far it's been pretty bad since their week 1 victory against Eastern Kentucky. After beating the Colonels 56-7, they've gotten really destroyed the last couple of weeks. Against Arizona State, they made a late comeback but ended up losing 30-23, and then they got killed at home by Toledo. Yes, Toledo is probably the best team in the MAC, but to get pushed around in your own stadium by a MAC school is just embarrassing. This past weekend, they would play in the SEC Toilet Bowl against Florida, and honestly, Florida beat them in pretty much every single way. So far, Mississippi State is in a bad spot, and it's only to get worse as their starting quarterback Blake Shapen is done for the year, and they'll have to turn to true freshman quarterback Michael Van Buren Jr. to take over for the rest of the year. Their main bright spot has been transfer Kevin Coleman Jr. from Louisville, and for now Mississippi State is sort of in a really dark spot. At number 15, we have the Florida Gators. Billy Napier was on the hot seat going into 2024 and was given the most impossible schedule to work with. While there is a way that Florida can get to bowl eligibility, they have a very slim margin of error right now. So far, they lost to Miami in week 1 and then beat Samford in week 2 when DJ Lagway started. In week 3, they lost at home to Texas A&M in the Swamp, and then this past weekend, as I just talked about, they went on the road to Starkville and won 45-28. Both Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway are starting to look a little bit better at the running back position, and things are slowly but surely getting figured out for the Gators. They've been playing a lot of their true freshmen, and while there's a lot of talent on the roster, I think they're a year away from really putting it all together. I don't know if Billy Napier's going to make it that far, but honestly, I think they should give him 1 more year to see what he can do with all this talent. It is that time of the year as winning season is back, football is back, and MyBookie is here to make sure you are ready to cash in on all the action. This season, MyBookie is pulling out all the stops with incredible promotions like a weekly risk-free boost on Thursdays where you can bet without a sweat. If your bet hits, you win big. If it doesn't, forget it. MyBookie will refund your wager. But that's just the beginning. MyBookie is giving away hundreds of thousands in prizes with their Super Survivor and Square contests. Get your entries now in for your shot at huge cash rewards. When you're ready to get started, be sure to use my promo code FISHER50 and make sure to get some extra cash on top of your first deposit. Okay, but what do you get when you use my promo code? Well, if you type in Fisher50, you'll get up to $1,000 in a welcome bonus bet, plus a $10 casino chip. MyBookie's tiered bonuses make it easy to deposit with crypto or with credit, and the bigger your deposit, the bigger your bonus. The bonus would be 100% match up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. With MyBookie, you can bet on anything, anywhere, at any time, and make your season a winning season. Be sure to check out my link down below and use my promo code FISHER50. That is FISHER50. Somehow, someway, Vanderbilt actually isn't dead last in the SEC. Currently, I have them at number 14. Clark Lee is slowly building something here in Nashville, and while the stands are still empty and they're still getting clowned on, Vanderbilt's gotten a lot better. In week 1, they played Virginia Tech, who was supposed to be near the top of the ACC, and ended up upsetting the Hokies 34-27. In week 2, they beat Alcorn State 55-0, and then right when Vandy takes a step forward, they always seem to take a step back, as they then went on the road and lost to Georgia State 36-32 by way of a crazy finish. This past weekend, though, they proved that when they get punched in the face, they try to respond, as against number 7 Mizzou, they hung around the entire game and even had an opportunity to win. After the game ended up going to overtime, Vanderbilt and Mizzou traded touchdowns, and then Mizzou kicked a field goal, and Vandy's quarterback and Vandy's kicker unfortunately hooked it to the left, so Vanderbilt lost an opportunity to pull off the biggest upset of the year so far. Quarterback transfer Diego Pavia from New Mexico State has looked sharp, and guys like Cedric Alexander and Eli Stowers have been pretty solid weapons in the passing and running game. At number 13, we have the Auburn Tigers. Hugh Freeze was hired on the Plains to replace a struggling Brian Harsin, and so far things honestly haven't gotten that much better. He hasn't really been able to figure out the quarterback position, and finally they have a couple of decent weapons on the team. In week 1, they beat Alabama A&M 73-3 before coming home and playing against Cal. While Cal is a solid team this year, no one expected them to win at Auburn, but that is exactly what happened, thanks in large part due to Peyton Thorne's 4 interceptions. Auburn has really butchered the quarterback position, and then after that, they came home and beat New Mexico. This past weekend, they were locked into a close game with Arkansas, but ultimately lost 24-14, and they just couldn't figure it out, and Hugh Freeze apparently claims that they would beat Arkansas 9 out of 10 times. Something very dysfunctional is going on at Auburn right now, as Hank Brown and Peyton Thorne can't seem to figure out the quarterback spot, but luckily guys like Jarquez Hunter and Keandre Lambert-Smith are having big seasons for them. At number 12, we have the Kentucky Wildcats. Mark Stoops has really rebuilt the Kentucky program and made them into a solid SEC school that is tough to beat. He always seems to have a good defense, and they always seem to do well in the portal, but this year has been really up and down for them. After blanking Southern Miss 31-0 in week 1, they'd come home and have a terrible performance against South Carolina. Quarterback transfers Gavin Wimsatt and Brock Vandegrift both looked terrible and kept throwing interceptions, and they got beat by the Gamecocks 31-6 at home. The following week, though, they ended up bouncing back. Number 1 Georgia came to town, and for the most part, this game was super close. Georgia ended up winning 13-12 after Kentucky decided to punt on 4th down late, and that honestly is going to be a huge what if for Kentucky fans. This past weekend, they beat Ohio, and so far the main problem for Kentucky has been the quarterback spot, as Georgia transfer Brock Vandegrift has honestly looked terrible. The offense is definitely a work in progress, but hopefully they get that figured out here soon. Up next, we have the Texas A&M Aggies. I know they're ranked number 24 in the country and are currently 3-1, but I really don't have that much faith in them right now. In year 1 under Mike Elko, the Aggies have been a mixed bag. In week 1, they played number 7 Notre Dame. The offense was really out of sync, and Connor Weigman had a terrible performance, so after losing that, they'd then play McNeese State in week 2 and win 52-10. Then after that, they went over to the Swamp and ended up winning a game there 33-20, and Marcel Reed showed that he could be the future of the Aggies quarterback position. This past weekend, they really struggled with Bowling Green as they ended up winning by 6 points, and while the Eagles also were pretty solid against Penn State, they should not be messing around with MAC teams at home. It honestly does look like Marcel Reed is going to take over this team, and so far they've been balanced on offense, as Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels have looked great at running back, but the receiving game has just not connected yet. Only one player has over 100 yards receiving, and that has to be fixed here soon. At number 10, we have the Oklahoma Sooners. Everyone knew it was going to be an adjustment for the Sooners this year, and Brett Venables was trying to prepare his team for a new level of competition. Luckily, they had some good players in the cupboard, but so far, it's not really mixed that well. After beating Temple 51-3 in week 1, they really struggled with a really bad Houston team at home in week 2. It took a late safety for them to really put the Cougars away, but luckily in week 3 they ended up bouncing back and won by 2 scores over a solid Tulane team. They are 3-0 going into a marquee matchup with number 6 Tennessee, and this game did not go according to plan. While they did hold Tennessee's offense to only 25 points, Oklahoma's offense could not get anything going. It got to the point where they benched starting quarterback Jackson Arnold in favor of true freshman Michael Hawkins Jr., and now there's a huge quarterback battle going on in Norman. Venables actually recently named Hawkins Jr. the starting quarterback, and Jackson Arnold is in big trouble right now. The main bright spot on offense has been Purdue transfer receiver Deion Burks, who's looking like he could have an all-conference season, but for now, Oklahoma has a really tough schedule, and they need to figure out some things here soon. At number 9, we have the South Carolina Gamecocks. Shane Beamer was sort of on the hot seat going into 2024, and many expected them to be a bottom dweller. Well, it looks like the Gamecocks had higher expectations for themselves, and so far they're off to a 3-1 start. They beat Old Dominion 23-19 in week 1, before going on the road and having that dominant performance against Kentucky. They then came home and played number 16 LSU on College game day, and after leading for the majority of the game, they ended up blowing it in the final seconds, missed a field goal, and lost a heartbreaker at home. This past weekend, they bounced back with a 50-7 victory over Akron, and right now the big talking point in South Carolina is the quarterback spot, as Lenora Sellers is apparently injured. It looks like Robbie Ashford will be the guy for the foreseeable future. Gold with Rocket Sanders, the transfer from Arkansas. The Gamecocks have also had a really solid defense, and it looks like they could end up playing spoiler to a couple of teams this year. At number 8, we have the Arkansas Razorbacks. Sam Pittman was on the hot seat going into 2024, but so far, he's done a pretty good job for the Razorbacks. After beating Arkansas Pine Bluff 70-0 in Week 1, they ended up going on the road and almost knocking off number 16 Oklahoma State. They should have had the game, but ultimately they gave it up and they lost. After that, they came home and beat UAB, and then this past weekend, they went on the road and beat Auburn 24-14. While Taylor Green has been a little bit underwhelming, he's been solid for them, and their real star has been their running back Jaquindon Jackson. At one point, he was a 4-star quarterback recruit who went to Texas, but after time at Utah, he ended up switching to running back and is now at Arkansas, and finally living up to his hype. At number 7, we have the LSU Tigers. After losing to number 23 USC in Week 1, LSU has been able to bounce back since then. They beat Nicholls State 44-21, went on the road and beat South Carolina in a thriller 36-33, and then most recently, they beat UCLA 34-17. While the game was a little bit closer than many expected, LSU has now won 2 straight games against Power 5 opponents, and so far they are starting to figure it out. Garrett Nussmeier is being really good at quarterback. Both Josh Williams and Caden Durham are emerging at running back, and the receiving room of Aaron Anderson and Kyron Lacey are also playing really well. Losing Harold Perkins for the year is a big deal, but LSU has a chance to continue to go up the power rankings. Another team that is slowly starting to fall is the Mizzou Tigers. Mizzou had playoff hype after beating Ohio State last year in the bowl game. Mizzou returned pretty much everyone, and many were expecting them to make the playoff. Currently now they are sort of on that playoff bubble, as after shutting out Murray State and Buffalo, they struggled against number 24 Boston College. Yes, the Eagles are good, but that's where we started to see some flaws of Mizzou. The passing game has been looking pretty stagnant, and that was on full display this past weekend against Vanderbilt. After a couple of dumb coaching mistakes and a very flat offense, Mizzou needed a miracle in overtime to end up pulling out a 30-27 victory, and while Vandy's a little bit better than past years, this is unacceptable for a team that's in the top 10 and is expecting to make the playoff. At number 5, we have the Ole Miss Rebels. Some people will be annoyed that I have them ranked this low, but again, Ole Miss hasn't really played anybody yet. They destroyed Furman in Middle Tennessee in weeks 1 and 2, before traveling on the road and beating Wake Forest 40-6. Sadly, Wake Forest has fallen off. This past weekend, they beat Georgia Southern, and right now, Ole Miss is putting on a clinic on offense. Jackson Dart has 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns, and Henry Parrish has been a star at the running back spot. Ole Miss is putting up points, but I'm kind of curious to see how they play against a better defense this week in Kentucky. At number 4, we have the Alabama Crimson Tide. Under head coach Kalen DeBoer, Alabama has not missed a stride, as they destroyed a decent Western Kentucky team in Week 1, then in these last 2 weeks beat both USF and Wisconsin. While the Wisconsin win won't look as good over time because of the injury to Van Dyke, Alabama has been cruising, and this week they play against number 2 Georgia in what could be the game of the year so far. At number 3, we have that team, the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia ended up struggling with Kentucky 2 weeks ago, but because of a huge victory over number 14 Clemson in Week 1, they get an opportunity to stay in the top 3 right now. They also beat Tennessee Tech 48-3 there, and while Carson Beck has looked a little bit underwhelming this year, Georgia as a whole still looks solid. The defense is elite, and they have talent at every single position. We'll see how they adapt to playing a team like Bama this upcoming Saturday, but for now, Georgia comes in at number 3. At number 2, I have the Texas Longhorns. After getting to the college football playoff last year, Sark and company were ready for the Longhorns to take the next step and hopefully get to the national championship game at minimum this year. They brought back Quinn Ewers and started out the season with a 52-0 win over Colorado State. In week 2, they got one of the biggest wins of anybody as they went on the road and beat number 10 Michigan 31-12, and they kind of destroyed a good Wolverines defense. After that, they came home and destroyed UTSA, and then this past weekend, with Arch Manning starting, they beat UL Monroe 51-3. While Texas has only played one decent team so far, they look really good, and they should cruise against a bad Mississippi State team before a Red River showdown with number 21 Oklahoma. Finally, at number 1, I have the Tennessee Volunteers. While some people might think it's controversial to have them ranked this high, they've been extremely dominant and they have 2 wins over ranked opponents. Yes, Oklahoma and NC State have fallen off a bit, but still, they have ranked wins and they've beaten 2 Power 5 teams. And then other than that, they destroyed Kent State 71-0 and Chattanooga 69-3. They also put up 51 points in that NC State victory, then this past weekend went into a hostile crowd and beat number 15 Oklahoma, to the point where they actually had to bench Jackson Arnold in favor of a freshman. Tennessee's offense looks unstoppable once again, but what's not talked about enough is how good their defense is. Right now I have them at number 1, and in 2 weeks they go on the road to play against Arkansas in what could be a thrilling game as well. Today I did a power rankings for all the SEC teams after 1 month of play, and be sure to let me know what I got right and wrong. I know the SEC is very polarizing, so many of you guys are probably ready to rip my head off, or maybe you think I'm right. I don't really know, but either way, let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video. Let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. And before you go, don't forget to also check out all my other videos on the end screen. And I hope to see you guys again soon. But until next time, peace.